But when you look at the science and you see that, glucose spikes and crashes create cravings, hurt our fertility, make us have wrinkles, impact our mental health, it becomes obvious that we should all care about it.
Welcome to the Siim Land podcast. I'm your host Siim Land, and today our guest is Jessie Inchauspé. Jessie is known on Instagram as the Glucose Goddess, where she documents her experiments with blood sugar monitoring. She has a Master's of Science degree in biochemistry. This episode is sponsored by Magic Spoon. Magic Spoon is a healthy version of all the unhealthy cereal you loved as a child. It's very high in protein, low carbs, 0 grams of sugar, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and with only natural flavors. The main ingredient is actually whey protein. There are many different versions of the nostalgic flavors such as frosted, fruity, cocoa, and peanut butter. My favorite one is the cocoa. They actually taste better than the original formulations with more crunchiness. Magic Spoon cereal gives you 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and only 4 net grams of carbs in each serving. If you want to try out Magic Spoon, then head over to magicspoon.com/Siim and use the code SIIM to get $5 off any order. Magic Spoon is so confident in the product that it's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you don't like it for any reason, they're gonna refund your money, no questions asked. So head over to magicspoon.com/Siim and use the code SIIM to save $5 off your order. Jessie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sim. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you have like a really a cool and fun Instagram account where people can see how you actually experiment with different kinds of foods and how it affects your blood sugar levels. And I think it's very educational and eye-opening a lot to a lot of people to see what the actual kind of refuting some of the myths about what is good for the blood sugar levels and that kind of thing. So maybe let's start with why did you start using the CGM in the first place and starting creating a content around it?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I've been on kind of a health journey for the past 10 years. When I was 19, I broke my back. I had a bad accident. And then since then, I've been just trying to figure out how our bodies work and what we need to do to feel good in the morning. So I studied biochemistry, and then I went to work in the field of genetics in Silicon Valley in San Francisco. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to put on a CGM. And this was 2018. And so I put on a CGM for the first time. And for me, it just kind of clicked in my mind that this was going to be something that was going to help me tremendously, because all of a sudden I felt like I could speak with the inside of my body. I could get feedback from my biology on what was happening. So I became just really fascinated by this technology, and I tried to understand, what is the set of rules I could define that will allow me to understand how to keep my glucose levels steady and how to avoid the glucose spikes, which are bad for you. So I dove into all the scientific papers and I started running experiments on myself. And I discovered some pretty awesome, useful, cool stuff. And so after showing my friends and my family, I put the information online on Instagram just so that more people could gain access to it. And then it just sort of blew up by itself. I think people became very interested in seeing nutrition science explained through, my own glucose data illustrating the concepts. And I think that was really key and interesting.
Yeah, I think it was relatively new. And even now, there's not a lot of people who actually use it, and there's not it's not that easily accessible. Although there some new companies are coming out with commercial CGMs and things. But before that, you were able to just get it from a doctor who prescribed it to you.
And actually, I'm French, and so I would get them in France where they're over the counter. So it was really, really easy. But in the US, it's quite complicated. But in Europe, it's pretty easy to get them online.
Yeah, that's true. But now it's more these specific apps that are tailored to the CGM and give it these graphs and stuff.
Correct. Yeah. They all use the same base hardware. The actual device is the Abbott Freestyle Libre, and then each company has built their own opinion, their own solution for what the best glucose app is. So it's quite cool to see, how they differentiate and what markets each of them serve.
Yeah. But I think maybe a lot of the questions people may ask is if you don't have diabetes, why would you use it? Why would you use a CGM if you don't have any actual diabetes?
It's a good question. And for the vast majority of the past, we thought that only diabetics should care about their glucose levels. But since 2015, we have really good data that shows us that actually 80% of people who do not have diabetes still experience big glucose spikes every day into the pre-diabetic or diabetic range. And with those spikes come consequences that impact us short-term and long-term. So more and more studies have come out really explaining that actually everybody should care about their glucose levels. And we're very much at the beginning of that. But when you look at the science and you see that, glucose spikes and crashes create cravings, hurt our fertility, make us have wrinkles, impact our mental health, it becomes obvious that we should all care about it. And then, but I would say like there's a difference between caring about your glucose levels and wearing a CGM. I think the work that I do is trying to help people who don't have a glucose monitor actually implement a lot of the hacks that keep your glucose levels steady, right? And so I think the first step is to do that. And then if you want to go further, it's to wear a CGM, but they still cost quite a bit of money. And so I don't think everybody can afford that. And I'm trying to serve the part of the population that can't afford a CGM, but wants to get their glucose levels healthier. That's my work.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I agree totally that, let's say these big swings and most people aren't aware actually like what their regular blood sugar level is. And it has like a huge impact on health, not only like diabetes, but also like metabolic syndrome and premature aging, and those things can be
Totally.
caused by this just excessive amounts of a blood sugar or high elevated blood sugar all the time. And if you don't actually, with a CGM, it's easy because you just see all the time, like 24/7, what the data is compared to like a finger prick that you need to kind of use it regularly. So it's much more convenient, at least like in the short term, to use and see, what kind of responses you have, because it's very like individual as well. Like some people may, shoot up quite a lot to a particular food like a banana, whereas others don't, or like some are allergic to, let's say, gluten or whatever, and their blood sugar rises. So it's always like 100% individual, and there is no objective response to every person.
I wouldn't say that. No. Every person has a different response to the same food, but if you look at the science, there are very big key principles that work for everybody. So you and I, if we eat a banana, we might have a different blood sugar response. But if both you and I had some apple cider vinegar before, or had the banana with some nuts, both of our spikes would be proportionally smaller, right? Yeah. So the principles apply for everybody. Then to see within a category of food, which fruit spikes you more than the other, that's where individual response comes in. But no, we have very established principles that work for everybody.
Yeah, for sure. Like I agree with that. It's just like some individual nuances, and like how big the spike is gonna be, that is like individual and depends.
Totally. Yeah. And another reason I think it's cool when you are able to get a CGM is that it really sort of motivates you to do well when you see the response of your body to implementing one of the hacks I share, for example. It's a good reinforcement to actually see the hack at play inside of your body. And I think that's also one of the great things about CGMs, is just to get feedback in real time on what you're doing. I think it's really awesome.
Yeah, and it's also fun. Like it's like fun to use it and look at the data and look at the graphs, and becomes like almost like a game, like a gamified way of the same way like with the sleep tracker. Like if you track your sleep, then it becomes like this. You want to score higher points and actually do better, and makes you actually make better health choices.
Yes.
So, more careful with like overeating carbs or whatever.
Totally. Exactly. Have you tried for a long time? How long have you had one on?
I will have tried one like maybe a year ago. I'm going to try again this time, and actually I'm gonna, with my girlfriend, we're gonna do like together for this time period, and we're gonna see how we're gonna differentiate between each other from the blood sugar, and I think it's quite fun.
That's really cool. Very fun. You'll have to share the results with me. I'm curious.
Yeah, I'll do like a video probably about it.
Nice. Nice.
But what have you learned? Like, what are the biggest lessons you've learned from your own CGM use?
I think before I wore a CGM, I had this belief that in order to keep your blood sugar levels steady, you had to cut out all carbs. I thought that that was the solution. Turns out there's a lot of stuff you can do to still eat carbs, starches, and sugars, and keep your glucose level steady. And my first experiment was around pasta because I love spaghetti. And so I think the first night I wore a CGM, I had a spaghetti for dinner and I saw a huge spike. So my first challenge was, how do I eat the spaghetti without such a big spike, without, you know, all the consequences on my body that the glucose spike might bring with it. So my solution was, I started implementing a spinach salad before the spaghetti, because if you have fiber before you have starches, the fiber coats your intestine, and then you actually absorb less of the glucose from the starches. So you're eating the same spaghetti, but it's creating a smaller glucose spike. So I started doing that. Then I discovered the whole science of vinegar and how vinegar actually tells your muscles to soak up glucose faster when it arrives into your bloodstream, making the spike even smaller. So now I had the sequence. I had, okay, before the spaghetti, I'm going to have a big spinach salad with a vinaigrette. And then with the spaghetti, I would also add protein. So I would have like soft boiled eggs with it as well to sort of create this nice package for when the starch lands in my system. It doesn't actually diffuse glucose as quickly and as violently. It's tapered by the fiber, it's still done by the protein and the vinegar. And all in all, I was able to have spaghetti dinner without a spike. So that was a pretty cool first experiment for me. Big success.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fiber is one of the biggest ones that lowers the blood sugar response, and the vinegar is great. And even things like, you know, protein and the different kind of polyphenols, like there's some, you know, some research about how like the meal actually before the following meal determines how your blood sugar response is going to be. So even if you eat like an egg before for breakfast, then your lunch blood sugar response is going to be lower because if you had like this protein and satiety from the egg, and or like whey protein, you consume like whey protein a few hours before the carb meal, then your blood sugar response is also going to be smaller from that. So it's
absolutely,
there's actually a lot of like, you know, ways to hack it, so to say, so make it more healthy and less impactful on your blood sugar levels.
Exactly. No, it's really, really cool when you start discovering this stuff, and it opens up like this whole world of experimentation, you know, and it's not just what you see on the glucose monitor, because you actually feel it. You know, you actually feel less tired after the meal, you have more energy, you feel lighter, you sleep better. So it's really cool because the impact is instant on your mental and your physical health.
Yeah. What is, let's say, what would you consider high? Like what are some levels of, you know, your normal blood sugar response, and where do you consider something that starts to be more, you know, elevated, and where do you, let's say, where do you not want to go? Like where is like the diabetes range?
So if you look at the medical guidelines, they say a few things. So they say that your fasting glucose levels should be under 100. And then they say that after a meal, you should never go above 140 milligrams per deciliter. And that's the medical guidelines. If you look a bit further in the studies, but they're really early, so we don't really know for sure, it seems that actually an ideal fasting glucose level is more like underneath 90. And then if we look at in healthy individuals and people who don't have diabetes, if we look at the glucose spikes, it seems that actually the objective might be to reduce any spike of more than 30 milligrams per deciliter after a meal. And the thing with glucose is that the lower, the better, you know, but you want to be careful because sometimes you can lower your glucose levels by adding other stuff into your diet that might cause other consequences. So if you add a bunch of like vegetable oil to your meal, your glucose response is going to be lower because the fat is blunting the glucose arrival, but you're giving your body all this unhealthy fat, right? So that's one example. Another example is like alcohol. If you have a glass of wine before, whatever, a cocktail or something, before you have a meal with a lot of starches, the glucose spike will be lower because the alcohol is going to your liver and it's actually preventing your liver from producing any glucose. So you'll see a smaller spike, and so you'll be, oh, I have to drink wine before every meal. Actually, that's not the case, right? Glucose is just one of the variables that we have to look at. So it becomes quite complex when you start wearing it and testing it on yourself, which is why what I try to do on my Instagram and in my book is to sort of simplify everything and just say, what are the big principles that allow people to have steady blood sugar levels without doing things that might cause other issues.
Yeah, and that's super interesting.
Yeah,
because like obviously, let's say metabolic syndrome, which is let's say, super bad for your health and increases risk of heart disease the most would be, it involves not only high blood sugar levels, but also like high triglycerides and low HDL and high blood pressure and just waist circumference and those kind of things. So it would be very important to know those things as well. But
yes,
what happens, let's say you don't do anything for blunting the blood sugar. You eat, just, straight up white bread or something like that. What is the spike gonna do? What is
inside the body?
Yeah, what's the effects?
Yeah, so there's three main mechanisms of how spikes lead to consequences in the body. The first one is that every time you have a glucose spike, the glucose enters your cells and it overwhelms your mitochondria. Your mitochondria are really happy when they get some glucose because that's how they make energy. But if you give them too much glucose, they sort of freak out and they go on strike and they're like, I can't handle this big spike, like I'm shutting down. Your mitochondria become stressed. And then they start producing these molecules called free radicals. Free radicals lead to oxidative stress, lead to generalized inflammation. And this is just this sort of chain reaction of stress from a glucose spike inside your body that leads to the development of diseases. Second thing, and by the way, if you eat something sweet, so that has glucose and fructose in it, that has table sugar in it, basically, this process happens even more. So that's something to keep in mind as well, is that if you see two spikes, one from, let's say, a piece of toast and the other one from like a cookie, if the two glucose spikes are the same, the one from the cookie actually has a hidden fructose spike as well. Anytime you taste something sweet, especially in desserts and pastries and that kind of stuff, if you see a glucose spike, there's an invisible fructose spike as well happening that harms your body even more. So the first mechanism is this mitochondrial stress that leads to oxidative stress and inflammation. The second one is aging, as you mentioned. So with every glucose spike, glycation happens in the body more and more. And glycation is aging, and it's the reason why our organs fail and we eventually die. So the more glucose and fructose spikes, because fructose also makes it go faster, the quicker you age. So that happens internally with your organs, but also externally. You see wrinkles and, from the outside, you look older as well. And then third process by which glucose spikes impact our health is that every time there's a spike, your pancreas produces insulin to take the glucose away and store it into your liver, your muscles, or your fat cells. And this is good because it helps your body prevent the damage from a glucose spike that would be too high, but it has its own consequences. Too much insulin over time leads to the development of insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, etc. And importantly, these three processes, they go even faster if you're eating something sweet. So that's why it's always better to have something starchy than to have something sweet.
Right. So would you say, you're saying that even if the spike is like, let's say, higher in the short acute term, then that's worse than a chronically slightly elevated blood sugar. So let's say, like,
absolutely,
if you spike it once to like 200 milligrams, then that's worse than having 130 milligrams all the time.
So I'm not sure exactly, I don't know exactly the scale of like, is 130 the thing, or is it a baseline of 120 that's okay versus 200? But what we do know from the science is that it's the spikes and the dips that create the most stress in the body. So it's been studied specifically on blood vessel cells, and they've shown in the studies that yes, a spike is worse than a steady, slightly higher baseline. But I'm not exactly sure, like,
where's the limit? Yeah.
Where's the limit? If a 200 spike is better than like a 120 baseline, a 140 baseline, like I'm not sure. But generally it's the spikes that we want to avoid, because they cause the most damage.
Yeah. Well, I personally may think that, I don't know specifically either, like, where's the limit? I would maybe guess that, let's say if you're to have pre-diabetes for 10 years, then that's probably worse than, let's say, having cake at a birthday, like, let's say once a week, once a month or something like that. Like, if you eat the cake, then your blood sugar will rise. But if you're at other times, or you're like, healthy and quite low blood sugar, then mean, is that still healthier than having like pre-diabetes for, you know, an entire year or 2 years, 10 years? Like in the end, I think like the pre-diabetes, having this blood sugar level at around like 150 or 130 or 150 all the time, 24/7, may actually over time just, you know, just accelerate more the aging and cause more damage just because it's, you know, 24/7 elevated. Whereas even if you eat like a piece of cake, or let's say more cake, or that you actually eat like Oreos or whatever, even if your blood sugar goes like 210, 250, but it drops back down, then but at other times you're like relatively healthy, like is it really worse than having pre-diabetes for like five years?
No. I definitely don't think that that's the comparison we can make.
Okay.
I think it's more like if you have fasting glucose that's at 92, but every day you have big spikes into the 120 range, that's worse than having a steady 95 fasting that never moves. You know, it's more like that. We're not talking about we're not talking about such a big range comparing prediabetes to no diabetes. I think that would be extending too much. I would look at the studies, but definitely intuitively, I think it's pretty clear that it would be in the sort of smaller, lower ranges.
Yeah. So yeah, like you would like the majority of the day you would still want to be like around 100, maybe below a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially at least like while fasting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But it's really interesting because there's also a genetic component to all of this. You know, your fasting glucose level is also related to your ancestry. For example, people of East Asian descent, they just naturally have a higher fasting glucose level. We know that our gut influences our fasting glucose level. We know that stress influences it as well. Hydration. I mean, there starts to be a lot of variables to sort of understand and peel through. And so I've tried to simplify all this because it can get quite confusing.
Right.
A lot of people tell me that they got a CGM and that it really clicked for them when they found my work, because it allowed them to sort of understand and put context around everything so they could make sense of it. Because I think if you're just dropped into the data, it can be very quite challenging to like understand what's happening and what's good and what's not good and what to do.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's good clarification.
Yeah.
What determines the blood sugar rise in the first place? So like we already talked about that. My blood sugar response will be something different from someone else's towards the same food. So what determines how a particular person will respond to like a meal?
Yeah, so it will be a combination of many things happening in their body. So it'll be how quickly they're eating, how hydrated they are, what the composition of their gut bacteria is, their stress level, their age, their metabolic health, you know, how well they slept the night before. I mean, it's just like you and I will definitely have different responses to a banana because, you know, we're just different people. We have completely different bodies and microbiomes and lifestyles. It also depends what you ate for your previous meal, what you ate the night before, how much muscle mass you have. I mean, the list goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
Which is why I think, you know, while that is interesting, I think most people get a huge amount of value by just sort of applying the key principles, which are eating your vegetables first when you have a meal, starting your day with a savory breakfast instead of a sweet one, incorporating vinegar, moving after you eat. If you want something sweet, having it as dessert instead of as a snack, you know, those kinds of things go a super long way. But when you and your girlfriend do the testing, you will definitely see very different responses. However, as I mentioned, like if you both eat a banana, you might see very different spikes, but if you both add nut butter to the banana, both your spikes will be smaller. And the thing is, you can't really compare two people's glucose spikes and just like make a judgment call about which person is healthier because there's just so much stuff going on.
Right.
Yeah.
For example, like you can let's say if you exercise before eating the carbs, then it will also shuttle the glucose faster into the cells. Like the let's say near maximum intensity muscle contractions are gonna recruit the GLUT4 receptor to the cell surface that actually drives the glucose into the cell without needing insulin. So even if you're like insulin resistant, let's say exercise will bypass that thanks to this GLUT4 activation.
Exactly.
So you
Yeah.
can, yeah, if you exercise before, you can have like a better blood sugar response if you're diabetic and obese than someone who is fit, but they, let's say, eat the carbs while being sedentary and after waking up, for example.
Exactly. And also, like, if you've been fasting for 3 days and then you eat a banana, you're going to have a much bigger spike than if you've been eating for a while. Also, if you're somebody who has ovaries and you have a menstrual cycle, depending on when you are in your cycle, the levels of hormones in your body will be different. And so your response to the same food will be different. So it's just like, the constellation of variables is so wild. I mean, it just like, it blows my mind.
Yeah. Are there any like supplements that help with that? Are you using any supplements with the blood to help blood sugar?
It's interesting. I'm starting to look more into that. So the big one that we know works really well is vinegar. So the acetic acid in the vinegar has a huge impact on telling your muscles to uptake more glucose. So that's really, really useful. Then people find that berberine works, cinnamon works. I'm going to start experimenting with probiotics and just sort of see if, you can change stuff in your gut in terms of the metabolism of the glucose to actually move the spikes and the fasting level. That sounds really interesting. But I'm not a big supplement person. Apart from vinegar, I don't really take anything for my glucose levels because I find that what has the most impact is just what I eat, the hacks. And I just don't like taking pills every day.
Right.
I'm just not that kind of person. Yeah. But there's a lot of cool stuff to try for sure.
Yeah.
But you can't like out supplement a bad diet. Like if you're just eating starches and sugars, it's not because you sprinkle some cinnamon on it that it's going to make a difference.
Maybe if you take like metformin, maybe a little bit, but that's not like recommended for most people, I think.
Yeah, I mean that's a proper pharmaceutical drug that's prescribed to people with diabetes. So that's a whole ball game.
One good or simple one is also chromium. So chromium picolinate has like a long, let's say, history of use for blood sugar and insulin resistance and even like cholesterol levels. So what chromium does is just it basically activates this chromodulin, which is this enzyme that also helps to basically shuttle glucose into the cells. So if you have chromodulin with the chromium, basically, or chromium activating chromodulin, then you're gonna, the blood sugar is gonna be, or you need less insulin to get the job done. And if you are insulin sensitive, then the insulin response is gonna be more enhanced, so that the blood sugar would be lower faster.
Nice. Have you tried it?
Yeah, I take it actually almost quite regularly, like
really?
Because like I take it like on the days like I do the sauna, or because you lose a chromium from the sweat, so to replenish that I just take it and in some studies it also helps with body composition. So like these bodybuilding studies, they find that it helps with that. So some bodybuilders actually also use it.
Very cool. Very cool. Nice. Yeah, I'm gonna look more into this. I think it's really interesting. But so far I haven't really dived very deep into supplements. It's my next field of study.
Are there any way, like we mentioned a few of them, how to make yourself more insulin sensitive, like by default, to let's say because there is some like let's say misunderstanding about insulin. Like obviously you don't want to have high insulin levels, but like not enough insulin can also actually make you have high blood sugar levels because you're not producing enough insulin to shuttle it into the cells.
Oh yeah, no, insulin is very important. I mean, without insulin you die. So people who have type 1 diabetes who have lost or don't have the ability to make insulin, they have to inject themselves, several times every day with insulin to compensate for what the pancreas isn't doing. So it is a vital hormone. It's not like just this bad thing. We absolutely need it. But it's kind of like, there's the right amount. And then if you have too much of something good, problems start happening. I mean, if you give a human too much oxygen, they pass out. If you give a plant too much water, it drowns, like we need insulin, but too much starts creating issues and it starts reducing insulin sensitivity. And then you need more and more and more. And then that's type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome. So it's just important to remember, like, insulin is normal. It's a vital part of our functioning body. It's just when there's too much for too long that problems happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think the best things to do is to obviously exercise and build some muscle
Yeah,
mass. That makes you more very insulin sensitive,
totally.
and eating also foods that help with insulin sensitivity, like cinnamon and like one supplement I also like is inositol. So that also
Yes.
helps with basically producing insulin, and you get like some foods with inositol, like grapefruit, which is known to help with also blood sugar response.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And
but
so why? Yeah.
I'm obviously because like some of the controversy is also that you know if you go low carb, then you're not really becoming more insulin sensitive. Like you improve your blood sugar levels and insulin levels, but you're not really becoming more insulin sensitive because
Mm.
you're not eating foods that raise insulin, and over time your body actually becomes less efficient at it. So if you eat carbs, then you're healthy and you do all the right things, then still producing the insulin is still going to make you like more insulin sensitive. You basically don't want to be basically keeping the blood sugar low all the time or being in full ketosis, because that will eventually also make you a bit insulin resistant.
Interesting. Yeah, the one study that I found that was kind of on this topic is that if it's around fasting and the first meal you have after you've been fasting for a long time. So if you've been fasting for a long time, and then you have carbs, your body's insulin levels are so low that you get a massive glucose spike. And so you get all the harmful consequences. So what you're saying is like you have to remind your body to train itself to produce insulin when it
Yeah,
needs to, so
yeah,
that it doesn't just shut off the production completely. And then you might get consequences when you do eat stuff that rises your blood sugar levels. Yeah.
yeah. That's like chronic ketosis can cause it. So cyclical, at least but I think is like a bit healthier.
So
Um,
what do you do? You do cyclical ketosis?
well, I'm not like full ketosis almost ever.
Yeah.
I do like a cyclical. I do fast as well. Like I eat once or twice a day, so I get
Yeah.
this period of this some semi ketosis in the morning, and when I do it, like most of the time I eat like still low carb, but I'm not like worried about the carbs. I'll just eat
Yeah.
vegetables and things like that. But on some other days I eat like more carbs with some potatoes or fruits, and especially after workout. So I'll use the carbs to help with muscle glycogen and
Yeah.
recovery. So yeah, I can adjust the carb intake based upon my physical activity. So if I'm exercising more, then I eat more carbs. If I'm sedentary, then I just eat less.
Yeah. That makes sense. Nice. When are you starting the experiment with your girlfriend?
Well, we're waiting for to set up with the app, but maybe like in a few days, tomorrow or
Nice.
something. Yeah. So
Exciting.
it's
Very cool.
the video should be out before this podcast comes out. So
Nice. So you can reference it.
yes.
You can send people to it.
Yeah. But let's say you messed up, you ate foods that raise your blood sugar quite high, and maybe you eat like a cheat meal or something. So is there ways to like repair the damage, or how do you, let's say, go about lowering the blood sugar after a meal?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I'm not a proponent of never eating carbs, not at all. Like I eat a lot of carbs and I think it's cool to just enjoy them. They're part of life. And so that's a question I get often. It's like, oh, I was at a birthday party. I just ate like 5 slices of chocolate cake. That's probably not great for my glucose level. Is there anything I can do? And the good news is there is. So then the two main things are, one, you can always drink some vinegar afterwards and it will still help your muscles uptake more glucose as it comes into your body. So, a tall glass of water, 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, white wine vinegar, whatever you want. You can use a straw to protect your teeth. If you do that within 2 hours of eating the stuff, it's still going to help you. And then the other very immediate thing you can do when you just ate something that is spiking your glucose levels is to just contract your muscles to move your body. So go for a walk, do some push-ups, clean your apartment, go dancing. This is the most effective way to get your glucose levels back down, without increasing insulin too much, because when your muscles are contracting, they can uptake glucose without needing insulin. So it's pretty good. So vinegar and muscles.
Yeah, like even like going for a walk,
Mm-hmm.
like a 10-minute walk, and almost like cut it in half. I think the
Exactly.
blood sugar response. Yeah,
Exactly. It's very, very cool. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And most people just lay on the couch after eating the dinner or something, which is not the best response actually. So you should go
Yeah,
for a
it's
short
not the
walk.
best. I mean, it's also fine, but yes, I agree. Like the short walk is really nice. Get a dog and walk your dog, or
Mm,
even doing the dishes, or cleaning your kitchen, stuff like that is really helpful. Yeah.
mhm. So we were talking a bit about like fasting and ketosis. So
Mhm.
have you tried or measuring, looking at how does the fasting affect your blood sugar levels?
Totally. I mean, so when you're fasting, you're not eating anything. But what's remarkable is that your glucose levels actually stay very, very steady, because as you're using glucose, your liver is producing glucose to put into your bloodstream. So you see something extremely steady. And when you work out and you're fasted, you might actually see a spike in your glucose levels, because that's your liver releasing glucose for your muscles to use. So depending on what you're doing, even when you're fasting, you might see some movement. But really, I mean, fasting and ketosis, that's when you see the steadiest glucose levels of all, because you're not eating anything that turns to glucose. You're not eating any starches or sugars. So it's like it's a pretty boring glucose curve.
Yeah. What's the lowest you've been with the blood sugar?
The lowest, God, I don't know, in the 80s,
Hmm.
probably.
Okay.
But the highest, I went to, so one thing that really blew my mind is that I once spiked to 200,
Hmm.
not after eating, but after a stressful presentation I had to give in front of like 500 people.
Mm-hmm.
And the stress response in my body was such that the cortisol and everything pumped all this glucose into my system so that I could run away from the tiger that
Mm-hmm.
wasn't there. And with eating something, I think the highest was probably 180 when I ate like 12 cookies one day.
Nice.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, I don't remember. The lowest I've been has been like I did like once a 5-day fast, and I
Yeah.
measured not with the CGM but with the finger prick, and it was not precisely, I don't remember, but maybe in 74 or 60, something like that, which is quite low. But the highest with when I did with the CGM, that was yeah, maybe 180, something like that. I didn't eat like a cheat meal or anything, but it was just like a high, more voluminous food of let's say maybe potatoes or something. Because like even if it's like healthy, like let's say whole foods like potatoes or fruit, if it's like a large amount, then that can also skew the results, or the blood sugar response
Yeah.
gonna be higher compared to, let's say, one Oreo cookie probably isn't gonna spike it as high as like a kilo of potatoes or whatever.
Totally, absolutely. However, in the Oreo, there's also fructose because it's sweet.
Mhm.
So it's actually probably worse to eat the Oreo than to eat a bunch of potatoes just because of the presence of fructose.
Right. um, stress uh, stress raises blood sugar. Mm, do you see like also the diurnal change, like in the morning when the cortisol production is naturally higher? Is your CGM also
Yes,
elevated?
I see. It really depends on the day. It's really incredible. So some days I have a little spike when I wake up. Some days I don't. Some days coffee might spike me, other days it doesn't. There's so much I still don't understand about the response of my body to things. But yeah, I mean, the morning spike is pretty common in most people. I
Mm,
think for me, it only doesn't happen if like I'm on vacation or something and I don't have to wake up and I just kind of stay in bed for a long time. Then I see less of a spike. But
mm,
if I know I have to wake up early and I jump out of bed, then that's also, my cortisol waking me up. So then I see a spike for sure. Yeah.
mm. Maybe like using an alarm clock would probably spike it much higher than waking up naturally.
Yes, 100%. Because you jump, and you're like, oh my God, what is this? And so that's
Mm,
the stress response that
mhm.
probably creates a glucose spike. Yeah. But again, like, okay, so glucose spikes are just part of life as well. Like you're
Yeah.
never going to be able to avoid the glucose spike when you wake up. So I don't want people to become obsessive. Like if this starts being too stressful, like the spikes and everything, like just just chill, focus on the hacks I share because that gets you 80% of the way there. And be mindful, if you have a history of becoming a bit too obsessive with numbers, or if you have an eating disorder and stuff like that, just self-select when it's a good time or not a good time to wear a glucose monitor,
Mm.
because it can become a bit stressful for some people. I think for most of us, it's just very interesting, and it allows us to connect with our biology in a new way. But
Yeah.
there's a small segment of the population that needs to be mindful. Yeah.
Mm. Have you like developed any like spidey sense around it, that if you're not using the CGM, can you still tell like, okay, approximately how much my blood sugar is going to be
I
after a
think
meal?
I'm probably right now at like 94. I'm not wearing one right now. Yes, I've definitely developed a sense.
Mm.
100%. Yes, 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 yes.
Nice.
And you really can start feeling it in your mental state. Like you can feel the spikes. You're a little bit agitated, like whoa, and then the drops. I mean, the drops, everybody can relate to that. It's like you feel tired 2 hours after a meal, or you have a craving for something really sweet in the middle of the afternoon. That's most likely a glucose drop after a spike.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that you do feel a bit different if you have like high blood sugar, like your blood, almost like the blood flow is also like somewhat faster. Like you can feel the blood flowing more rapidly, or maybe like the heart rate is also increased.
Oh, you can feel your blood flow?
Well, if it's like flowing faster
Okay.
than normally, then
You mean the heartbeat?
yeah, but the blood flow as well a little bit. Like you can feel the surge a little bit, similar to like exercise. If you're doing a cardio, then you can still feel like some
Mm,
blood surging through your system. But if you eat like a high carb meal, then sometimes you'd also kind of feel like that.
yes, you feel a bit like heated and a bit like, yeah, I see what you
Yeah,
mean.
yeah, yeah. But exercise, like, how does the exercise for you affect your blood sugar?
Exercise is great for you, regardless of when you do it, what you do it. So it's always a good idea, 100%. What's kind of cool is to see that if you exercise after you just ate, your muscles are going to be using the glucose from that meal. And
Hmm.
if you exercise when you're fasted, your body's going to be releasing stored glucose to fuel your muscles. And so in that case, you might see a spike. It's not a bad spike. It's actually your body going through your reserves of glucose and spending them, which is excellent news. So that can be something that is a little confusing to people sometimes. Like, why do I see a spike when I exercise? And I wrote a blog post that's called "Why Spikes When You Exercise Are Good for You." It's kind
Mm,
of like it's one of those instances where spike is not bad. So
mm,
there's a lot of stuff to keep in mind. Yeah.
gotcha. But if you spike it during exercise, then are you still gonna get like the blood vessel damage or the free radicals and things?
Good question. So you do get that, but the cool thing is that exercise actually has also a lot of anti-inflammatory effects. And
Mm,
so in the balance, it's actually positive and helpful for the body. It's a type of hormetic stress that actually is overall good, even though it is still a stressor. The positive effects outweigh the negative consequences of the spike.
mm. Yeah, I mean, like exercise also raises inflammation and creates these free radicals and reactive oxygen species,
Yeah.
which are actually part of some of the adaptations that you get. So, like, if you blunt those as free radicals from exercise, then you're actually not going to like, or at least some of the adaptations are gonna be smaller if you blunt like with antioxidants after exercise. So you'd actually need some of that inflammation to
Yeah.
experience the benefits of exercise. So yeah, not always they're not always bad.
Exactly. It's like insulin is not always bad. Like you need it. It's
Mm,
helpful for the body. So we have to make sure to not overgeneralize things. And exercise is always going to be helpful
mm-hmm.
for your body long term. Yeah. Even
Yeah.
if there's a spike, it's okay.
uh, so you've also been writing a book about this. Can you talk
Yes,
about it? Yeah.
totally. So it's called Glucose Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And it's out March 31st in Europe in English and April 5th in the US. And I learned so much about glucose, and there's so much information that people asked me to put it all together because it's hard to know where to start. So this book is the ultimate place. It's the one single thing you need to get your glucose levels steady and to start feeling amazing physically and mentally. It's kind of like I like saying that my Instagram is the trailer and the
Mm.
book is the movie.
Okay.
But it has way more than what's on the Instagram. It has a bunch of stories of people implementing the hacks. I dive into every single condition, physical and mental, affected by glucose. There are 10 hacks in there, while there are only 7 on my Instagram. There's my story in there too, if people are interested. And it's really, I hope it's going to become, the staple of how to get your glucose level steady. I hope people will start with that.
Nice. And where is it sold?
Everywhere that books are sold. So you can get it on Amazon, Glucose Revolution, the life-changing power of balancing your blood sugar, but also it's going to be in bookstores. It's coming out in over 15 languages. And we're adding more languages all the time. So hopefully everywhere. But if you go on my Instagram, you can click the link in my bio and it has all the links for all the countries. Yeah, my Instagram is Glucose Goddess for those who don't know.
Nice. Yeah, we're gonna put all the links in the show notes.
Thanks,
and I wanted to ask, like how often do you use the CGM, because it lasts for 14 days?
Yeah.
So like, do you use it all the time, or how frequently do you actually use it?
So the first 2 years I had it on the whole time. And now I kind of cycle. So I do it like once or twice per trimester. So like about 1 out of every 3 months is what I do. Yeah, that seems to be a good cadence. Because I think all the time, sometimes you don't need it all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely at regular intervals is really, really great. So you can see how things are changing. You can check back in with your body. I love it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's good to basically have at least a trial run of 14 days to get the baseline. Yeah. And after that, if you're like healthy and everything is fine, then you probably don't need to track it all the time. But if you have, let's say, some signs of prediabetes or something, then maybe try it again a few weeks later when you've changed things. But yeah, like not all the time is needed. But I think everyone should maybe do it like once, at least once in their lifetime or something. Yeah,
and if you can afford it, it's really just a nice partner to have ongoingly, and just to check back in. I think there's a lot of value even for people without prediabetes to check back in with their glucose levels on regular intervals. But it's up to the person to figure out what works for them, for sure.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Well, it's been great talking with you. Before I ask my last question, where can people learn more about you and your work?
The best place is on Instagram, Glucose Goddess. That's the hub for everything. Yeah.
Nice. And my last question is, what's this one piece of advice or habit that you wish you adopted sooner?
Ooh, keeping my phone off for the first hour after I wake up.
Nice.
That's been a really big change in how I sort of set my mind and my intention for the day, and it's allowed me to really reduce stress and be much more effective in what I want to achieve, what I want to get done, how I feel. So that's a huge one for me. Yeah.
Nice. Good advice. Yeah, it probably also keeps the blood sugar low, that you're not gonna get triggered by some news or. Totally,
absolutely. Yeah. Nice. Thank you for having me, Sim. It was really nice.
Yeah, it was great to talk.
Take care. Bye.